Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch 2020, our show following all the news and rumors on the Xbox Series S and X and PlayStation 5. I'm Daemon Hatfield, and as always, I'm joined by Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
See if you can find the Easter egg in the picture behind me.
Ooh, I like we're gamifying the show. Yeah. And Jonathon Dornbush, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast, Podcast Beyond.
There are 12 PlayStation 5s behind me. I hope you can find them.
Wow. That's very generous of Sony to share that many with you ahead of time. We have so much to talk about this week. So much has happened since we all last watched together, my friends. We finally have release date and price for Xbox Series X and Series S. And of course, during that time, all this information about Series S leaked. Microsoft confirmed it. Now we finally know when we're going to be able to play these consoles and how much they're going to cost us. So November 10th is the release date for both Series X and Series S. X is $500. Series S is the digital-only version, 1440p instead of 4K, but otherwise fairly similar specs. That one's going to come in at $300. First of all, Ryan, are you surprised at the $200 difference in these two consoles?
Yeah, I mean, we expected a lower-powered Project Lockhart, as it had been known prior to its official unveiling via controller packaging as the Series S. But this is a very pleasant surprise. $299. Here, let me get it.
Here it comes.
All right, here it is. It's not real. It's just a mock-up, but at least I have an idea now of its size and sort of its build. You can check out a ton more photographs. We lined it up next to everything we could think of on IGN.com. But yeah, here's the Series S. And yeah, to your point, Damon, this is a lot of machine for $300. Basically, what Microsoft is doing is doing most of the same next-gen features, the NVMe SSD hard drive, ray tracing, and more. And they're doing it with Xbox Velocity Architecture. That was the other one I was thinking of. But instead of aiming for 4K, it's a 1440p box. So if you don't have a 4K TV, if you don't plan to get one, if you're hooking this up maybe to another monitor in the house that's not 4K, there's a lot of value here. Now, it is only a 512 gigabyte hard drive, but it is that same NVMe SSD. So between your OS files, which we don't know how much space those are going to take up, but and then we know how big games are getting these days, it probably isn't going to hold too many games at a time. But nevertheless, $299. This is the surprise. This could be the secret weapon for Microsoft here this holiday and beyond.
Yeah, it does appear to be a great value. I wonder, though, for people that do have 4K televisions like myself, how are games going to look? How are Series X games going to look on a 4K TV?
That definitely remains to be seen, but they are upscaling. So if you do connect it to a 4K display, it will upscale. Microsoft has experience with that before, both the S and of course the X. If the game's not running native 4K, can upscale. So we've seen Microsoft do this before, and this. We'll see how their upscaling technology has continued to evolve by once we get a chance to hook this thing up to a 4K display.
All right, so Jonathan, Xbox has a $300 next-gen console. Should Sony be worried?
I don't think so. I think it really is going to come down to what Sony prices the PS5 at. I think that's when we should know whether or not Sony should be worried, is if they at all go above the Series X. I think we're going to run into some issues when it comes to the PS5's launch. But that said, at least for me, I was always expecting, honestly, the Series S, the Lockhart, to come in at that much of a deficit compared to the Series X, mostly because I didn't really see the point of doing a cheaper, somewhat less powerful, or at least less capable device if it wasn't at a significantly lower price point. So I think it was a really smart move to have this cheaper price point with largely the same functionality. I'm actually pretty impressed by the parity for the most part that you're getting there. So I think it's really going to depend what Sony does with both the PS5 edition that has a disc drive and the discless version, where they come in and how competitive they are to the Series X in particular.
So pre-orders for Xbox Series X and S go live on September 22nd in just a couple weeks. PlayStation 5 just has to also be pre-orderable by then, right? There's no way Sony can just stand by and let another next-gen console go on sale, right?
Yeah, I mean, they have to at least tell us that information by that date. Like I cannot fathom a world where you let your competitor get all of the possible dollars of undecided buyers and just not have any of that information out there. Whether or not pre-orders go up by then, this has been such a strange year. I wouldn't, say it's an absolute certainty, but I think we have to know how much the PS5 is going to cost, what the release date is going to be, and when we can pre-order it by at least that date, because otherwise they're just giving more people incentive to go buy an Xbox if they're not really certain what they were going to buy.
And we haven't even talked about Xbox All Access. Starting at $25 a month for 24 months, it will get you a next-gen Xbox console along with Game Pass Ultimate with no additional fees or upfront costs. And they're going to be adding EA Play this holiday as an additional service, no extra cost. Ryan, are you seeing this as a good value?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a pleasant surprise to get a free EA. They're calling it EA Play now, an EA Play subscription bundled in with your Game Pass subscription. So, you've got some EA Sports stuff in there. You've got some BioWare stuff. I mean, you've got different titles from a lot of their different studios, including early access to some of their newer stuff before it becomes on sale with the general public. So, even if you weren't necessarily thinking of subscribing to that on its own, now as part of Game Pass, that really strengthens the argument for Game Pass. It's moving Xbox one step closer to their whole vision of being the Netflix for games. So now you can have with that $25 a month, if you do the all access, you can get a Series S for $25 a month, which includes all of Game Pass plus EA Play. I mean, that really is an impressive value, to the point where, I mean, yes, it's going to be aimed at maybe some of the more casual gamers that may only buy a couple of games a year, but it's also, I think, going to be, I think Microsoft knows they're not necessarily going to sway a ton of diehard Sony loyalists to switch outright to the Xbox. But if those people are going to buy a PS5 anyway, well, maybe the Series S with this all access, with Game Pass, with EA Play, that suddenly becomes a really affordable and appealing second console option for a lot of people that maybe they wouldn't have quite thought about that before, but that could really tip the scales for a lot of people to go ahead and pick up both consoles.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering is with Xbox All Access, is it going to be such an attractive deal that will all of a sudden, with the next generation of consoles, will a lot of PlayStation owners have the Xbox Series S as their secondary console when they didn't own an Xbox before? Jonathan, does that seem like a likely scenario to you?
I mean, at least for me personally, I was going to go into this fall knowing the economy is what it is and prices are tough. I was going to buy a PS5 and probably wait for an Xbox, especially with Halo being delayed. Now I'm going to buy a PS5, and if I can, I will probably do this layaway monthly all access program with the Series X. Because that's, I believe, $35 a month.
Correct.
And that as, a monthly payoff for both the Series X and Game Pass Ultimate. I'm already paying for Game Pass Ultimate, so I get that console with, a minimal upgrade in price each month. I think it's a great deal. I think maybe even more than the Series S. I think just these options that Xbox is giving is the really, really smart play when they are trying to, come from behind going into next generation, with PS4 being the clear market winner for this gen. This is a really, really smart way to say, hey, we're giving you all of these options, a great investment, over time. Paying $35 a month is a pretty easy way to get the secondary console even right away for me. I'm seeing it as a much more reasonable way to want to go down having an Xbox Series X now as opposed to buying one a year from now.
And some people have correctly pointed out that $25 a month over 24 months comes out to $600, which it could appear to double the cost of the Series S. However, I think the added Xbox Game Pass Ultimate is just such an incredible value. Over 100 games available, and all of the first-party Microsoft titles coming up are included. So when you consider the fact that the price of next-gen games, if they're going to come eventually settle down to $70, you can only get about 4 of those games before you cross that extra $300.
And Game Pass Ultimate's $15 a month. This is Ultimate we're talking about. So yeah, that really sweetens the deal.
So Jonathan, do you think Sony needs an answer to this, an answer to Xbox All Access?
I think they do, only when they are losing. Like I don't get me wrong, I would love for them to have a competitive offer for this, and I think it would be a really smart move. That said, because they are the market leader at this point, I would not be shocked if they don't make moves like this until they have to. Xbox made a lot of moves this generation, and I love them for doing this, but like they made a lot of moves because they were behind in sales, and they've made a lot of great moves that have brought a lot of goodwill over to them and are offering so much to the consumer. PlayStation has a lot to offer on its own too, but I don't think they're going to go for as many moves that you could argue maybe lose them out on certain sales of first-party games, because if they offered something similar to Game Pass, I don't think we're going to see them make those moves until they are backed into the corner to make them.
All right, so Microsoft blinked. They announced the price and release date. Both series
involuntarily they blinked.
Sure, involuntarily, but still they went first.
They blinked, yeah.
Now they've surely forced Sony's hand. Sony has to reveal this information soon, within the next couple weeks. So, Jonathan, what's your best guess? When does Sony announce price and release date? And what's your best guess for the price?
Well, today would have been a really great one as the 25th anniversary of the PlayStation 1, as we're recording this. So a few days before this episode airs, the PlayStation 1's 25th anniversary in North America. That would have been a really great way to sort of, look ahead and look back at the same time. That said, I wouldn't be shocked if we get something next week. Even that gives Microsoft a little bit of time, but very clearly Sony has been able to get a lot of attention by saying nothing over the last few months, and this whole year they've really been able to get a lot out of very little. So I wouldn't be shocked if they give this some breathing room and then come back with something next week.
And for what it's worth, Phil Spencer tweeted that they were originally going to announce next week. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if both of them had, whether not that they coordinated it, but if both of them were going to go next week, and if Sony still does.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think next week is definitely a likely candidate. Don't get me wrong. I'd love it if it was tomorrow, even though that means we'd have to scramble to do a secondary recording. But I'd see something next week. And my best guess, actually on this week's most recent podcast Beyond, I convinced myself of 3 different release dates. So that's where I'm at currently mentally. But my guess is the disc drive version will go for $500, and the discless version will go for either $400 or $450, depending on how much, of a loss they want to take. And as for release date, I would say probably the 13th, which is that Friday. That's the same day that Call of Duty comes out. And obviously Call of Duty and PlayStation have been working with a partnership for this entire generation. And so to have that be a day and date release on PS5, the multiplayer reveal had PlayStation 5 footage. It feels like it goes hand in hand, and it gives them enough breathing room from when Cyberpunk, I think, is going to take up a lot of the conversation, regardless of what platform you're playing on. So I wouldn't be shocked if it's that date.
All right, so you're guessing that Microsoft will definitely have the lower priced next-gen offering this fall. Ryan, do you also feel confident about that? Any way Sony can match a $300 price point?
Oh, no. I mean, and it's the PS5 digital, unless Sony's really been hiding some detrimental information, it's the same exact console, same hardware, same teraflops, same horsepower, the whole thing, just without that Blu-ray drive. Whereas by design, the Series S is a lower powered machine that's not aimed for 4K gaming. So no, Sony would have to seriously eat a ton of money per unit in order to price match on the digital. And as Jonathan wisely pointed out earlier in the show here, they're the market leader. They don't need to do that. There is no need for them to do that. So yeah, it's just a question of what the gap is going to be between the Series S and the PS5 digital.
All right. We have the results of last week's poll. Last week we were talking about the very impressive new graphics cards from NVIDIA. And we asked you, do NVIDIA's new GPUs tempt you to switch from console to PC? And perhaps unsurprisingly, the majority of you said no, you'll be sticking with your consoles. 53% of you said that. We have a new poll for you to vote on for next week. We want to know, does the $299 price tag raise your interest in the Xbox Series S console? Maybe you've always been a PlayStation gamer or Nintendo, never owned an Xbox. Does that $299 Xbox Series S with Xbox All Access make you start wondering if this should be your first Xbox purchase? Make sure to vote at IGN.com. We'll share the results with you next week. And that will about do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch 2020. Thank you to both Ryan and Jonathan. We'll be back next week. Friday, 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern, with more PS5 and Xbox Series X news. We'll see you then.